To those of you who came here to cry about The Last Jedi being a great movie, well, congratulations, you're wrong, but I'd still give you a medal of participation because we're allowed to have our own opinions and enjoy any sort of entertainment products. So, to The Last Jedi fans, you can gladly bugger off and drink your soy milk as you watch CW's Batwoman, go on Twitter and rage about fictional problems or something, but to the rest of you, welcome to my salty review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Star Wars The Last Jedi is one of the most insufferable experiences that I had the utmost displeasure of watching, feeling like it was written and directed by the biggest moron who probably gave a pen and paper to a bunch of kindergarten students and promised them an ice cream cone if they could come up with a screenplay by the end of the day. No, actually that statement alone is an insult to the brilliant kindergarten students who probably has more of an understanding to the meaning of coherent storytelling. If you are a Star Wars fan, then I presume you went out of the theatre back in 2017 feeling like you got butt fucked by Satan, except that would actually be less torturous than sitting through Rian Johnson's seeming pile of horseshit. No one, and I mean no one on planet Earth, is more horrid than the biggest man baby in the filmmaking industry. Instead of accepting the crystal clear fact that he directed the worst Star Wars film in existence, he instead opted to go in full denial mode by attacking fans who gave valid criticism about his failure of a movie. Look, personally attacking a filmmaker is one thing, but nicely giving critical points and suggestions is a whole nother story altogether. Let's take the director of the Sonic Hedgehog film as an example. We all saw the horrifying trailer and voiced out our opinions, thinking that nothing was going to happen. We were then surprised by a tweet from the director claiming that everyone involved in the film was going to do all they can to fix it. That right there is how you take criticism. This man and everyone involved in the project has earned my respect alongside millions of other fans, I presume. Doesn't matter how the movie is going to turn out, they're still getting my money because they showed initiative to improve and cater to the most important community, the fans. This salty man baby, on the other hand, has much to learn. This is the man that was given one of the biggest and most important responsibilities. The pressure he faced was probably unimaginable. So what did he decide to do? That's right, subvert our expectations. Should I follow up to a coherent storyline from where The Force Awakens left off? Nah, let's just ruin one of the greatest characters in the history of cinema, kill off a potentially awesome new Sith Lord, and make the lead character a Mary Sue. And while we're at it, let's just make the other characters with some sort of potential that J.J. Abrams established uninteresting. And oh wait, there's something missing. What is it? That's right, diversity. So let's add this plank into the mix and yeah, I think that will do it. Oh wow, I'm sure this is gonna be a fantastic sequel. I swear to God, this guy has never watched any of the Star Wars films and probably skipped The Force Awakens as well. The fact that one of the worst heads of a gigantic multi-billion-dollar company is still associating with Rian Johnson instead of kicking him to the curb right away absolutely disgusts me. I have never seen a more oblivious, idiotic, and not to mention naive leader than Kathleen Kennedy. Instead of serving 100% of the fanbase equally, she's completely chucked aside the male side of the fanbase and instead focused her intentions on making the Force female. Are you fucking kidding me? Let me just state some facts here. More than 70%, if not more, of your fan base are males. I know America has a huge female Star Wars fan base, but over here in Asia and my own country, I have never met or came across another female Star Wars fan other than my mom. And that's because she was lucky enough to have lived through the originals. Back in 2015, I watched The Force Awakens with my mom, and her first response after the film was, it just wasn't like what it was back in the day with Luke, Princess Leia and Han Solo. And the fact that my mom, who pretty much enjoys any movie which includes one of the Transformers film, did not like the new Star Wars trilogy film says a bloody lot, doesn't it? Let me put it into perspective and sum up real quickly why The Last Jedi and the future of Star Wars is absolutely fucked. Number one, we have the worst leader of a multi-billion-dollar company that focuses more on politics instead of crafting solid films. Number two, the film was handed over to a man that knew rat's ass about Star Wars and cared more about fulfilling his fetish of subverting our expectations. Reason number three, the characters are piss pot boring with horrendous writing and dog shit execution. Reason number four, we have a Rose. I repeat, we have a rose.
Would you say it's time for our viewers to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside? Yes, I would, Ken.
An absolutely cancerous addition to this universe. Let me be honest with you for a second. Not 2 weeks ago, I had a little marathon rewatching every Star Wars film, which of course had to include The Last Jedi just for the sake of completion, right? And hand to God, every single scene Rose was in frame, I skipped it. This of course includes the whole cringy Canto Bight scene that makes me honestly want to fucking stab myself in the cornea repeatedly every time I'm forced to see it. I just cannot stand this goddamn potato. I'll get into further details regarding my hatred of Rostico a little later on. I don't know about you, but I found The Force Awakens to be a pretty enjoyable movie. Technically, it was of course superb with the acting, visuals, and not to mention we get a beautiful lightsaber fight towards the finale. But in terms of the storytelling perspective, it of course has issues with the biggest and most talked about one, which is it's basically just a rehash of the New Hope, and I completely agree 100% with that statement. However, when I got out of the cinema back in 2015, I was actually bloody hyped for the sequel, perhaps never been more hyped for a film sequel in my entire life, maybe other than Avengers Endgame. But I cannot say the same about The Last Jedi, because when I got out of the film back in 2017, I was seriously disappointed, not angry, but disappointed. And then I slowly started to process the film, because like most human beings, you initially start off in a state of denial, especially if you are a fan of that product. It may take a week, a month, or maybe even a year, but once you fully process it, you will come to an agreement with yourself that it wasn't as good as you thought. I mean, that's applicable to other films of course, but I'm sure your initial reaction after The Last Jedi was to drink to that or perhaps drown in tears of sorrow as you figure out the best title for a petition to immediately remake The Last Jedi. But sadly, those two options are not going to change a damn thing. But what we can do is voice out our opinions, and we have clearly done so over the past 2 years. However, I see absolutely zero changes. Caitlin Kennedy, being the genius she is, took it upon herself to go one step further into throwing this amazing franchise into the darkest pits of hell, where you can literally see Satan burning people alive. She decided to hire D&D to write the future Star Wars trilogy. These are the two jokes who ruined one of the greatest TV shows, or should I say, the one that could have been. Let's be honest, nobody's gonna edge out Breaking Bad, but Game of Thrones could have done so if it wasn't for these idiots subverting our expectations and turning grade A characters into piss-pot jokes. Yeah, sure, they did a great job with the previous seasons, but that's because they had George R.R. Martin's incredible source materials to aid them. Without a solid source material or a basic foundation, don't you think these guys are gonna struggle with the new trilogy? Because all 7 billion human beings on the planet seem to think so, except this woman right here. Is she genuinely okay in the head? I'm a little concerned for her health, and as a precautionary measure, she should immediately step down from her role and focus on taking care of her health. I haven't even began talking about the movie, and I'm already stressed up just mentioning the Devils Incarnate. As much as I would love to go off track here and talk about the original trilogy, or hell, even the amazing prequels, I can't make this into a 6-hour video, so I'm just gonna leave all the good stuff for a whole nother video. You know, oftentimes when I talk about a bad movie, I may sometimes exaggerate that it's torture getting through it, but this time, I'm dead as serious. All jokes aside, it really felt like I stubbed my toe and hit my elbow on the table at the exact same time as I had to rewatch The Last Jedi twice in the span of a month. Yeah, just imagine. First time was of course for a Star Wars marathon, but this time around I had to analyze the film carefully, scene by scene, and couldn't even skip the dreaded Canto Bight bit. If I did skip the whole Canto Bight scene, it would be unfair to my viewers and sort of messes up a coherent review in terms of storytelling. Sacrifices had to be made in order for this review to be done, so without wasting any more of your valuable time, let's get into Star Wars The Last Jedi. We open with a classic exposition Star Wars scene, letting us know all the necessary information in order for us to catch up on what's happened since the end of episode 7. That's odd. I thought the entire First Order got blown to hell in Force Awakens, but Rian Johnson decided to give them instant respawn just like what D&D did with the Dothrakis. Not only did they get instant respawn, but their forces are now big enough to take down the entire Republic. The Resistance is exposed again, and guys, you really need to be more discreet, like for real though. Two rebels shout really loudly about loading ammunitions. The First Order manages to interrupt the rebels in the middle of their evacuation. The biggest idiot in the Star Wars universe orders his troops to prepare the Dreadnought. Wait, is that the woman from Game of Thrones with the retarded breast milk drinking kid? Leia, being the brilliant general she is, sends a single fighter to take on the entire First Order. They attempt to interject humor with the interaction between Hux and Poe, but just comes off as forced and cringy, and at the end of it really does no favors for Hux's character. For someone that's been given the position of a general just below the ranks of Snoke and Kylo, Rian Johnson's brilliant idea was to make him look like a grade A moron throughout the entire film instead of writing him in to be intimidating. Hux literally has the opportunity to destroy Poe right at this very moment, but instead gives Poe some leeway to potentially disrupt his plan, which of course does happen later on. Why does this happen, you ask? Because the plot says so. Really not understanding how the most powerful Sith Lord gave such a coveted pose to this mashed potato. Hux finally screams "Open fire" in an attempt to be intimidating, but it's too late as Poe had enough time to engage. Look, I get it, Poe is one of the best pilots in the galaxy, but he's no Anakin. He hasn't learned the ways of the Force, and most importantly doesn't possess Anakin's raw talent and gift for piloting, but somehow he just makes any other pilot in the Star Wars universe seem like a chump as he takes on the entire First Order for a few moments. He manages to dodge everything that's firing his way, including a bunch of TIE fighters. The bad guys fires the Dreadnought into the rebel base, but don't worry, they've all evacuated just in time. How convenient. And as we run through the story, you're gonna notice a glaring pattern of convenience, but we will touch on that as we go scene by scene, as I am trying to keep this review as coherent as possible. Leia calls her troops to fall back, but Poe disobeys her orders as he's desperate to take out the final Dreadnought. We see a few Resistance bombers, which are of course a new addition to the Star Wars franchise when it comes to the films. And I really don't know much about science or space physics, but a few people have pointed out that the gravity factor is inaccurate when compared to reality. And before I give you guys my honest opinions regarding this, let me just clarify that I'm not defending the movie in any way, shape or form, but Star Wars is classified into the genre of science fiction for a reason. So the Resistance, Rebels, fuck it, I'm just gonna call them rebels. So the rebel bombers' scientific deficiency didn't really bug me as much as it may have bugged you, but it's fine. That's your opinion and I respect that. In terms of science, it gets a pass from me, but in terms of logic, this is where problems start to arise. Why not just build cannons that can fire the bombs? This really gives you an opportunity for ranged attacks and avoid yourself from being too close to the enemy and enabling yourself to be a blob of a target. As it is, the ship is basically paced like a snail, and not to mention that one hit in just the right spot blows the ship to hell. There's no logic, there's not much sense, and it's just an incredibly stupid addition just so we can see Rose's sister die and then get introduced to the worst thing in the franchise. All the bomber ships gets blown up, but conveniently there's one left despite all the TIE fighters that surrounds it. So none of them felt like it was a good idea to blow the ship that's potentially gonna wreck a huge portion of the First Order. I don't know why. Probably because plot. So one of them does eventually fire at the ship. Okay, good job mate, but you really need to follow that up with a few more shots just to find that sweet spot. But because plot, we need to allow Rose's sister to do her thing. The bomber ship gets knocked and Rose's sister, who seems to have a less insufferable face than Rose, falls to the bottom of the ship as the detonator sits on top of a laddered platform. She starts kicking the ladder in hopes the remote would fall, and a last gasp effort sees her succeeding in doing so. However, the detonator clearly falls way out of her reach, and unless she just so happened to be fucking Mr. Fantastic, no one's gonna be able to catch their remote. No fucking way. She somehow caught it. My suspense of disbelief can only go so far. I mean, I already gave you a pass for that stupid fucking bomber ships. Well, kind of, but now you follow up with this. Just fucking piss off, man. The fairy tale plot continues and allows her to drop the bombs, and she dies. A valiant sacrifice, the one that we never needed because you indirectly gave us this plank. Alright, so we clearly saw the Imperial fleet get taken down, but what about the rest of the TIE fighters? Either I lost focus for a minute, which I probably did, or they just disappeared in the background. Oh well, the audience were probably too hooked on the giant explosion scene, so they must have forgotten about the other threat factors. Snoke calls in Hux and starts tossing him around for failing to take out the rebels' scum, and this scene right here confirms two very important factors. Number one, everything I said about Hux is true, and number two, Snoke showcases how powerful he truly is. These factors are really important, so make sure you drill them into your brains, as it does tie in with the future problems that I'm gonna discuss. We finally see Finn as he gets out of his recovery pod. Not exactly sure what that is. Poe notices that he's a bit dazed and lost as he approaches him. I was actually quite excited to see the bromance develop between these two and perhaps follow up on a decent foundation of Finn's character. But fucking hell, we all know the tragedy that's about to strike poor Finn. It's okay though, since the checkmark soy boys definitely approve Rose.
Serious?
We cut to the island where we left off in The Force Awakens, absolutely eager and excited out of our minds to finally get Luke's reaction when he's handed the lightsaber after all these years. Instead of focusing on what Luke's character would have done in this given situation, Rian Johnson, being the fantastic comedian he is, makes Luke toss his lightsaber. And I'll admit, the first time around when I saw this in the cinema, I laughed. But once you process a given situation and realize how idiotic it is, you will come to the conclusion that this man baby just gave us the slightest taste of injustice that's coming to Luke's way. Luke goes back to his igloo home and he's just portrayed as an old grumpy man that doesn't have the faintest of care as to what Mary Sue has to say. Chewie breaks down the door and an annoyed looking Luke asks Rey as to how she located him. Mate, you do remember that you gave the map to your exact location in R2. The whole existence of The Force Awakens was about the Resistance literally trying to find the missing piece of the map which you inserted inside R2's system. At least if he asked the question as to how Rey found him with a follow-up statement that he was confident that nobody would be able to find the other piece of the map, would have really solved this exchange of dialogue and made sense. But this mashed potato couldn't even spare 2 hours of his pathetic life to sit down and watch The Force Awakens and at least take some notes down on how he was going to follow up on the story. I mean, this review alone took me 19 A4 pages just to make a bloody YouTube video. Honestly, I can name 10 YouTubers right now who would have wrote a way better story than this fucking man baby. It's bloody frustrating that this man got his hands on the biggest franchise on the planet without giving a care in the world just so he can fulfill his weird fetish of subverting our expectations. What a fucking bellend. We jump back to Snoke's ship and get a first glimpse of his throne room, and can we just talk about how bland and boring this set is? I've seen better sets in a fucking school musical. It really reminds me of Jeremy John's backdrop, but the only difference is one of the figures standing in front of it is more entertaining. Snoke gets pissed at Kylo for failing against Rey as he reminds us once again that she's an absolute nobody. Kylo struggles to control his emotions as Snoke electrocutes him and just shows his dominance. Snoke further provokes Kylo by slowly getting under his skin by making him aware he's no Vader but just a child, which is actually bloody true. He even tells Kylo to take off that silly mask, and I don't know about you, but I would rather see a cloaked up Kylo with his dubbed mask voice, which is actually pretty intimidating, rather than some shirtless hunk. Ryan actually found the necessity to score points with the 6% of teenage girls that comes to see a Star Wars film. Out of frustration, he smashes his helmet to absolute ruins, which is a clever metaphor for the Star Wars franchise. Rey persuades Luke to help her while mentioning that there is no light left in Kylo because the plot says so. He then asks her, "Why did you think I came to the most remote island in the galaxy?" I don't know, Luke. Why did you? I mean, you did only leave the Resistance a map to your exact latitude and longitude, and now all of a sudden you don't want to help them? Genius writing. Absolutely genius. Rey continues to follow Luke around like a lost puppy and he proceeds to milk some titties for that iconic blue milk. What am I watching right now? This almost feels like one of the darker genres in Pornhub that you accidentally click on, and it's fucking disgusting. He even makes this creepy face as he wipes off that nasty blue froth from his beard. Wow, that's a pretty big stick. Wonder how anyone could possibly aim from that high up, let alone find the target, especially after factoring in the basic element of science regarding the refraction of light. And what was the exact purpose of sticking the fish from all the way up there if you're gonna go down there anyways to pick up the fish? Luke lets Rey know that she just wasted her time by coming to the island. She then hears some voices and walks into this mysterious cave and notices some ancient books. Don't worry, they're not important for two big reasons that I'm going to touch on when we get to that scene itself. Rey then insinuates that she feels like she knows this place as Luke reveals that these books are the last of the Jedi texts. Luke once again asks Rey why did she come here a little more seriously this time. She implies that she's afraid. Luke then hammers it down her throat that he will not train anyone else after the failure of his last student. As if failing ever stopped Luke before. Ryan. Need I remind you that this was the man that turned the most evil and powerful Dark Lord in the galaxy to finally stand against the Emperor. Even after failing miserably in The Empire Strikes Back, even after losing his hand and best friend, he never for a second gave up. What happened to that Luke? Replaced for a quitter that drinks blue titty milk that ultimately ends up to be one of the most unsatisfying character arcs in the franchise. I could go on and on about how this mashed potato ruined Luke, but it's just stressful at this point. We cut to Leia slapping Poe and demotes him for single-handedly saving the Resistance. Leia lets a hesitant Finn know that they're gonna have to find a new base to settle into. The First Order manages to track down the rebels, and here's where the unnecessary addition of the fuel subplot comes into play. You know, I was just giving this movie the benefit of the doubt regarding the bomber ships, but now you want to apply real chemical science into this? Fine. You've played your piece and kinda strayed away from being a science fiction film that never had the fuel variable injected into the plot, but I guess because pretty much 50% of the plot revolves around this variable, we're gonna have to delve deep into this idiotic idea. The rebels are under heavy assault as we notice Kylo leading the pack. Poe gets pushed back by the blast instead of getting burned alive. I don't know much about standing inches away from an explosion, but I'm pretty sure the fiery bits that touches your body is gonna leave some third-degree burns at the very least. But don't worry, this is a Disney Star Wars film. Main characters have a plus 100 plot armor at all times. When you're watching the new Star Wars trilogy, you can just forget about these exciting terms called suspense and tension. Not once will you be able to feel those commodities as they're non-existent in this dumpster fire. Leia senses her son knowing full well that there's still conflict in him, and we get a shot of Kylo's finger almost pushing the trigger, but at the very last moment pulls away. Doesn't change how things were playing out anyways, as his troops fires directly at Leia's cockpit. She gets blasted into space alongside a few others, including Admiral Akbar, who wasn't even in frame. How dare you kill Admiral Akbar and not even show his final moments? Absolutely despicable. We then get the scene that I hate so much for two big reasons. Number one, it just looks so awful. And reason number two, how did Leia not get burned alive? I get it, she uses the force to pull herself into the ship, but she should have been dead. Ryan, however, decided it was a good idea to fulfill his fetish and subverted our expectation. Psych, bitch. Leia seems to be in critical condition, but she will be fine. The only good thing that came out from this scene is that Leia isn't dead. I mean, I would have praised Ryan maybe just a little for making a brave decision to kill off one of the OG characters, but he immediately takes it back. So yeah, you can just piss off. You don't deserve a sliver of praise. Not now, not ever. We cut to Chewie roasting a pog as the other family members, I guess, kind of disturb him, and my initial reaction was that it cannot be a pog. I mean, that has to be like a little chicken or something. Quite savage actually from Disney to actually kill an animal right in front of its family, especially since they touched on animal abuse later on. Wait, what am I even on? They're literally two different spectrums. Sorry guys, drinking a few bottles before this review probably wasn't the best idea. We see Luke in the Falcon sort of having a moment of nostalgia as he notices R2. When Luke started interacting with R2-D2, it just felt like I was watching the originals. The lines and the banter between them, as we remembered in the originals, was executed so nicely that it really did feel nostalgic for just a moment. Even the way Mark Hamill uttered his dialogues made him sound like a very young Luke. But sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but this was pretty much the only scene that really takes us back to the good old times. R2 then takes a cheap shot at Luke and plays Leia's old message to Obi-Wan. Luke then changes his mind and agrees to give Rey a few lessons. I mean, I'll definitely buy into that. If anyone can convince him to do something, it's Leia.
Women yet.
Sorry guys, I had to put it in. Random old lady tells everyone that Leia survived because of plot armor, but Admiral Akbar died, so we need to find a replacement. Random purple haired lady takes charge of the rebels, and look, as much as I loved Laura Dern in Jurassic Park, I just wanted her off my screen here. Poe then does what any normal concerned troop would do, ask their leader what exactly is the plan, but this idiot just decides to divert the topic entirely. She then starts undermining him to create unnecessary conflict when it all could have been avoided if she just used her bloody brains to give Poe the plan. Here's the deal, right? If Mashed Potato wrote her in to betray them later on, then this scenario would make much more sense, but no, she's 100% on Team Resistance. This is bloody too much for subversion of expectations. My head just hurts. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, Ryan subverts our expectations once again and somehow does make it worse. This is where it all begins. Rose. Ugh. We notice a random Asian chick crying to herself as clearly nobody likes her and she probably has no friends. Finn tries to grab an escape pod but is interrupted by the worst thing in the galaxy. Rian Johnson somehow achieved the unachievable. The introduction of Rose makes Jar Jar Binks bearable.
You almost got us killed. Are you brainless?
I speak?
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here.
No, Mr. Stay. Mr. called Jar Jar Binks.
Potato claims to look up to Finn as a war hero and then indicates she had to stun 3 people trying to escape the ship. Rose, are you a fucking moron? This is the Resistance, not a fucking Nazi camp. People are allowed to leave whenever they want if they feel unsafe. They may have family or friends that they need to go back to, and you think it's a good idea to stun your allies? At this point, the First Order system isn't looking too bad. I mean, just look at the facts. The rebels has an idiotic leader and some planked-faced potato not allowing people to leave the ship. So what? You're telling me that if Rose just so happened to be in the original, she wouldn't have allowed Luke to leave the rebellion to head to Tatooine and train with Yoda to eventually become a Jedi Master and redeem his father? And why the bloody hell is Finn terrified of this potato? He could have easily taken her down and said, I had to do it for a viable reason. Instead, she just stuns him and shows us how weak John Boyega's character is. They then start talking really fast about lightspeed tracking and proceeds to let Poe know about their genius plan to destroy the First Order's tracker. Alright, fine, this seems like a reasonable plan, but why not inform your leader about it? You're just gonna assume that she's not gonna approve cause the lines in your script said so. Finn then lets us know that some mumbo jumbo by hexocrypt code in the ship changes every hour and pretty much no one can get through it. They then call up Maz Kanata and she seems a bit busy shooting up the air around her because I really don't see anything else. She then tells them that they will need to find a master codebreaker that resides on Canto Bight. Here's the thing, right? We could have avoided the whole cringeworthy Canto Bight scene if they just told Holdo the plan. She could have just responded with, no, I'm not going forward with that risky plan, and then proceeds to reveal her one true plan. We could have easily saved like 20 minutes of garbage screen time and 5 billion scenes of unnecessary and forced conflict. It's a win-win for both the audience and the people that worked on the film. Can I just say that the Resistance is looking like a fucking discombobulated and disorganized group compared to the original rebellion? No one seems to be working together. They're pretty much divided during the worst possible time. And the best part is, this purple-haired twat assumed it's a brilliant idea to not tell her troops the plan. I don't care if this woman ends up saving the rebellion later on. Whatever she's done prior to that establishes her decision to be a shit one. We see Kylo getting his boo-boo fixed as he unexpectedly bridges his mind with Rey's. Look, we all know that Rey's parents ends up being nobodies, but the fact that Kylo and Rey can connect minds from halfway across the galaxy sort of reminds me of Luke and Leia, but maybe, just maybe, Kylo and Rey are siblings, as it would make more sense as to how they connected with one another. And J.J. Abrams did confirm with us that there's more to Rey's lineage in episode 9, so we'll just have to see what happens. But for now, we shall settle for unsatisfactory subversion of expectations. From pure instinct, Rey shoots her blaster and Kylo reacts as if he felt the shot. He then tries to force control Rey to bring Luke to him but fails. Luke calls to Rey and lets her know that the training is about to begin. Rey urges Luke to bring back the Jedi as she fears darkness is growing stronger within Kylo. Luke's first lesson is to prank Rey, and I'll admit, it was pretty funny. He then lets her know that the Force doesn't just belong to the Jedi, and she sounds somehow figures out that Luke has shut himself from the Force. He then claimed that he's never seen raw strength like this before since Kylo. He rushes away in fear, knowing full well the powers of a Mary Sue. Finn and Potato embarks on their ultimately useless side quest, and Holdo once again proves she's the purpled hair moron. As the leader, she wasn't even aware of a pod being fired from a ship. For fuck's sake, man, the Empire and the First Order have better technological systems than the Resistance. What a fucking joke. Remember in The Force Awakens when Finn and Poe escaped with a stolen TIE fighter? Yeah, it was immediately detected with their superior and organized systems. For some reason, I really like the shot of Kylo standing across the mirror just gazing upon the landing platform, and this of course brings me to the only technical aspect of the movie that I loved, which is the visuals and cinematography. There is no denying that this is the best looking Star Wars film to date, as we have plenty of stunning shots sprinkled throughout the 3 acts that's just bloody pleasing to one's eye. I guess that's the only sort of aspect that Ryan got right, but really that's not enough to carry the anchoring carcass that is the story. Out of confusion, Kylo questions as to why the Force is connecting them, as Rey just loses it and calls him a monster for murdering Han. Here's the thing, right? Just like in Force Awakens, I'm not so sure why Rey was so emotional about Han's fate when she barely knew the guy. You literally only spent a few hours with him, but I guess the script told her to be emotional, so Daisy Ridley just had to oblige. As the waves crashes into the rocks beneath the island, Kylo somehow got splashed as we see him rubbing off some water on his face. It's time for Canto Bight, guys. For fuck's sake, just kill me now. Potato starts talking and tells Finn that they need to find a codebreaker, and they notice some creatures getting tortured as well as a few enslaved kids. BB-8 reports back to Finn and Potato having found the codebreaker. Potato gets electrocuted, and it's pretty satisfying to see her getting a taste of her own medicine. As much as I want to shit on the whole Canto Bight scene, I'm going to do us both a favor and touch on it as little as possible so I don't have to insert clips or images of that scene, which would require me to ultimately watch it again while editing my video. To those of you that do your own editing, you know what I mean. As we jump back to Rey, she seems to be doing her own little training, swinging around her big stick. She then picks up the lightsaber and starts swinging it around with the same application, showing us that the mighty Rey needs no proper Jedi training to familiarize herself with the lightsaber. Yeah, she's pretty much at the height of her powers without having earned any of the necessary experience. I'm just wondering how powerful she'll be in episode 9. But to be fair, I honestly don't care if she is the most powerful character in this universe. What I do care about is ultimately how she got to that point. That's all we're basically asking for. Just shows why she's earned her overpowered abilities, but until then, she's going to be classified as a grade A Mary Sue. Luke then tells Rey it's necessary for the Jedi to end, as he continues, at the height of the Jedi Council's power, they allowed Darth Sidious to grow in strength, and it was indeed a Jedi that created Darth Vader. Rey responds cleverly to that statement that it was Luke, the Jedi, who redeemed Darth Vader in the end. It's an odd bit of dialogue and kinda seems like Rian Johnson did in fact watch the originals. Nah, this can't be right. He just probably watched one of Watch Mojo's crappy top 10 videos about Star Wars. Luke then tells us his side of the story as to how Kylo turned to the dark side, and he just cannot come to terms of the situation and forgive himself as he unintentionally created a new Vader. Rey tries to sugarcoat the bigger picture and tells Luke that it was the other way around, that it was Kylo who failed his master. Once again, Hux brings up that the rebel fuel is depleting rapidly, just to double confirm with the audience that we understand how fuel is the biggest factor in this science fiction story. The First Order shoots down a few rebel fleets as Bun Hair Girl that I do not know the name of lets us know that there is enough fuel for only 6 more hours of travel. Holdo, being the absolute brilliant leader she is, just says, "Steady on," instead of telling her troops what exactly is her ultimate plan. Listen here, bitch. Your troops, who are probably worried and anxious with the Order hot on their trails, deserve to know the fucking plan, so at least they can do some arrangements and pre-planning. This isn't Game of Thrones season 8 episode 4 where these band of idiots literally went in without a battle plan and got absolutely decimated. We then see a shot of Poe looking a bit worried because he knows full well that Rose is somehow gonna fuck it up. Potato, being the brilliant character she is, once again reminds us the fucking obvious that they can't disable the trackers without a codebreaker, and Finn responds exactly like how we all did.
And the fleet is running on fumes. Without a codebreaker to bring us onto Snoke's Star Destroyer.
Bitch, shut the fuck up, bitch! Back the fuck up, I'll knock the fuck out you. Damn, pussy, hey! Tell your kid what.
Oh look, how convenient, they just so happen to be locked up with Benicio del Toro, who just so happens to be a codebreaker. He then proceeds to effortlessly break out of his cell. Wait just a fucking minute, why is it only now that he's decided to escape? Why not prior to Potato and Finn coming along? Well, because the plot said so. BB-8 manages to take down a few armed and trained guards, and of course we didn't get to see it in frame because it really isn't possible unless it's R2 because he's fucking awesome, but BB-8, nope, not buying it. Don't get me wrong, I really like BB-8, but he just seems like the most overpowered droid that saves Finn and Potato's ass one too many times throughout the runtime. These are like the worst guards ever cause BB-8 literally starts shooting some coins at him and then he gets a little bit distracted and proceeds to get knocked out by a fucking boot. How are these guards even qualified to ensure the safety of a casino planet? Finn and Potato find themselves in an animal enclosure. The enslaved kid almost presses the panic button, but Potato shows him the resistance ring. They then release these horse-like creatures. I don't know what they're called. Couldn't even be bothered to look them up, but they then start riding them. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it just turns into a big, full-on Disney Channel original movie. This kind of shit is something that you'd expect to see in the prequels, but honestly, with how the film has panned out so far, this statement alone is an insult to the very well-constructed storylines of the prequels. Technically flawed, but in terms of a storytelling perspective, Episode 3 might just be my favorite in the franchise. The guards in these ships that are chasing after Finn and Potato are absolute tossers as they don't even shoot them, and I know what you must be thinking. They probably don't want to hurt the animals. But the fact that they're already abusing them makes no difference. If they just so happen to kill one of them while wiping out these two idiots, at least they could have saved the rest of these creatures. But because plot, let's not shoot these intruders that's causing chaos and disrupting the peace of Canto Bight. Finn and Potato then runs into some sort of paddy field and the idiotic guards are like, but where'd they go? You absolute dumbass. Do you not notice the moving leaves that's strangely heading in a straight line? Yeah, that's them. Potato and Finn eventually find themselves on the edge of a cliff.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
Yeah, don't worry. Conveniently enough for them, BB-8 and Benicio manage to steal a ship and rescue them. Yay. We jump back to the island. Luke uses the Force and connects with Leia and realizes she's in critical condition. And at the other end, Kylo connects with Rey again, but this time he's shirtless. Why? Oh, that's right, they're trying to score some points with teenage girls because it really was Caitlin's intentions to discard the male fanbase and replace it with angsty teenage girls that can be blessed with shirtless Kylo. Kylo provokes Rey to ask him why indeed did he kill his own father. He then adds an exclamation point letting Mary Sue know that her parents threw her away like garbage, traded her for drinking money. That's why she's been looking for a father figure in Han previously and now Luke. Kylo then tells us his side of the story of how his master attacked him first. Rey then heads over to the dark side of the island in hopes of finding some answers, and since the Force Awakens, the whole build up to finding out Rey's true parents was something I really anticipated for 2 whole years. Watching almost hundreds of hours of theories, thoughts and suggestions on YouTube and Reddit just made the suspense that much more heightened. But instead of giving us something to be satisfied with, Ryan was a little too horny for subverting our expectations, so he instead gave us a musical number. And when she does eventually ask to see her parents in this mirror of fortune and mysteries or whatever it's called, 2 shadows conjoins and reveals itself to be just Rey. What a fucking shit conclusion to Rey's lineage. And I get it, the whole point of this story is that anyone can be a powerful Jedi without having that oh so mighty Skywalker blood, and all you have to do is believe in the Force. Even the last shot of the film was that enslaved kid using the Force to pick up the broom. What I'm trying to say is that she doesn't have to be part of a known family heritage in the Star Wars universe, but at least make an effort to establish an interesting backstory for Rey and at least give us the slightest amount of explanation as to how or where she learned to fight, let alone pilot the fucking Falcon with ease. But no, they cut out all the important bits needed to flesh out a character and replace that with Ryan's genius plan to make Rey's parents a bunch of junk traders. How fucking disappointing. Kylo and Rey then touches hands and I can already hear the teenage girl screaming for Reylo when this happened. She then tries to convince him that there's a chance to shy away from the dark side as Luke comes in out of nowhere and disrupts the Force bridge. Rey gets pissed at Luke for giving up on Kylo, then just hits him from the back while asking Luke if he did in fact try to murder Kylo. Bitch, at least let him answer the question first before you decide to backstab an old man. Where's the fucking honor in that? They then get into a little duel and this is where I got so damn pissed. Luke Skywalker gets bested. by Mary Sue. It's ridiculous. Luke should have made a mockery out of her and in the process teach her a lesson, letting her know that she's not ready. But no, because she's a strong woman, she don't need no man to teach her the ways. She was just born overpowered with the perfect knowledge of how to wield a lightsaber, and an exclamation point explaining to us how powerful she is was added in with how easily she took down fucking Luke Skywalker. Mary Sue then forces the truth from Luke as he tells her what really happened that night. Luke had to stop Kylo as he already pledged allegiance to Snoke and was already turned way before he pulled out a lightsaber to murder him. Rey, however, is still confident that there is still some sort of conflict inside Kylo and they have to try and save him. Luke straight away disagrees with the statement, knowing full well that it's too late at this point, and we all knew who was right in the end. Eager to try and save Kylo, she leaves the island. Luke climbs up some stairs and we see Force Yoda standing in the back. I appreciate that they used the puppet Yoda instead of CGI treacle Yoda, just my preference. Luke tells his old master that he wants to destroy the Jedi text, but Yoda beats him to it. Luke then gives the "bitch, why'd you do that" look and rushes in to try and save the books, but it's too late. I don't get it. You were literally already on your way to destroy them, so why so surprised when Yoda beat you to it? I'm betting the script told him to destroy it, but Mark Hamill probably refused, so they had to bring in Force Yoda to do it. Hey, I'm just saying, there are tons and tons of interviews out there of Mark Hamill talking about how much he hated the direction of his character, and it's clear as day that it wasn't just the fans whom disliked the direction. Yoda agrees with Luke that the Jedi needs to end because the plot said so. They then have a little chat about Rey and how she's the one to bring balance, and Yoda claims that the Jedi texts are not needed anymore as Rey possesses everything. First time around I thought, wow, Rey doesn't even need the ancient text to learn everything about the Jedi, because not only is she overpowered, she possesses great feats of knowledge. But upon my rewatch, I noticed a shot towards the end of the film where Finn opens a drawer and we do in fact see the books. Yoda then claims Kylo has been fully turned, but Rey can be saved. We jump back to Potato and Finn as they once again ask Benicio if he can really crack the code despite already trusting him and riding along with this complete stranger. In exchange for his help, Benicio brings up the matter of a payment and immediately requests for Potato's pendant. Potato immediately tosses him the necklace in an act of desperation, despite it probably being the last physical memory of her sister. Benicio clicks a button to find out who was the previous owner of the ship and finds out they sold weapons to the First Order as well as the Resistance. This is fine, since the rebels themselves had to get down and dirty while breaking a few rules to get important information and weaponry, as we did see in Rogue One. The First Order takes out the last rebel support ship. General Hux reminds us that their fuel is at critical condition and will be just a matter of time before the Order can get the upper hand. Poe, looking a little frustrated and tired of Holdo's silence, once again demands the plan with a little bit of intensity this time, but this purple-haired idiot just diverts the question again. He then gets absolutely triggered after noticing Holdo fueling up the escape pods, and instead of calming him down and telling Poe the goddamn plan, she just tells the crew to get rid of him.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. Improvisation.
At this point, I'm just kinda baffled that Akbar had to die for this hack to take charge. Rey and Chewie heads over to Snoke's ship as she brilliantly goes in with no plan whatsoever to try and turn Kylo. Yeah, don't worry, she'll be fine. She pretty much beat Luke without breaking a sweat. Her overpowered abilities will serve her well against Snoke, and not to mention main characters are granted plot armor, so don't worry, she's coming out without so much as a scratch on her flawless skin. I mean, she really does have great skin. Just look at that. Upon her arrival, she is then greeted by Kylo. Remember when Luke turned himself in, he was pretty much a fully trained Jedi with experience. Rey on the other hand had like 2 bloody lessons which excluded the ways to wield a lightsaber. And I'm not saying that Rian Johnson should have given her the exact part that Luke took, but at least give her a proper training session. Hell, even a montage would have worked for me at this point. Just give us something that can sort of allow us to buy into the fact that she's ready to face the most powerful Sith Lord alongside an unsure and unhinged apprentice. Benicio hacks through the First Order's shield and manages to slip right through. At the same point in time, Poe finally tells Holdo about Finn and Potato's side quest. Holdo lets him know that the plan will never work and she's ultimately right, actually. Poe and a few rebel members finally stops Holdo in her tracks. Ironing machines. Interesting. Rey tries to convince Kylo to turn, but he insists that in time, she will be the one to turn to the dark side. We head in once again to the ugliest set design, and there sits Snoke. We cut back to Benicio as he uses the pendant to open up a socket and returns it to Potato. Not sure exactly why he couldn't just tell them the plan before Finn got all mad and stuff. This whole film revolves around characters not telling each other the plan for forced conflict just so we can extend the runtime. Benicio opens up the door only to be surrounded by stormtroopers. We see Phasma as she manages to toss in a few lines before getting killed off later, prematurely of course. Poe attempts to take command of the fleet, but Leia blasts open the door and shoots him with the shockwave gun. Everyone starts boarding the escape transport as Holdo finally tells us the fucking plan. Well, not really, she just lets Leia know that someone needs to stay back and pilot the ship. What, were you expecting us to feel some sort of emotion for Holdo with this scene? I kid you not, this was my exact reaction when the scene played out. Snoke continues to diminish and taunt Mary Sue as he tells her how much strength she truly possesses. Snoke then reveals that he was the one that intentionally bridged Rey and Kylo's minds together just so he could bait her, and she was clueless enough to take it. He then forces her to reveal Luke's location, but there's something that doesn't add up here. If he was in Rey's mind all this time, why did he still ask for Luke? Wouldn't he been able to easily extract the information from Rey and just head over to the island and fucking kill him? But I guess he just did as the script said, just sit on your throne and bait Mary Sue so you can eventually tell in person that you've been in her mind all this time. He then forces more information from Rey cause Rian Johnson didn't allow him to be smart enough to take advantage of her prior to their confrontation. Leia finally tells Poe the plan that they're gonna relocate on this uninhabited planet that was used by the rebellion back in the day. She's also pretty confident the First Order isn't tracking these smaller ships, so it's a 100% debt-free plan. Potato and Finn are brought forth to Hux as he just bitch slaps Finn. What? This sort of reminds me like when Nuclear Man bitch scratched Superman from Quest for Peace. I'm guessing a punch would have been too aggressive for a film produced by Disney, so let's just go with a bitch slap. Benicio reveals himself to be a traitor just doing what's best for business. Potato then scrambles like a dog trying to get her hands on the traitor. Bitch, you ain't going nowhere. The First Order manages to track down the rebel ships. Hux gives the order to open fire. Snoke manages to extract Luke's location as he continues to torment Rey and asserts his absolute dominance. He forces her to look through a mirror at the horrific sight of her people getting blown to bits. She tries to fight back by grabbing Kylo's lightsaber but just gets pushed away. Snoke, feeling a little bit fed up and tired, knowing full well she's never going to serve him, commands his apprentice to fulfill his destiny by ending Rey. The next line of dialogue that's uttered from Andy Serkis's mouth is a line that's made me confused, angry, disappointed, and asserts Rian Johnson's dominance of being an absolute tosser. Instead of Kylo fulfilling his destiny, Rian Johnson fulfilled his destiny of the ultimate subversion of expectations. Snoke literally tells us that he sees every move, every intent of what's going on in Kylo's mind, and then gets fucking sliced in half like a goddamn watermelon. The most powerful Sith Lord that managed to get into the mind of Mary Sue and Kylo undetected, tossing around Rey like a piece of garbage without breaking a sweat, possesses similar powers to the Emperor, couldn't even detect the lightsaber 2 inches away from him. What was the fucking point of Snoke? Why even bother building him up? Why even assert his dominance? Why even give him a storyline? Or hell, why even give him dialogue? We only have 3 movies here. If you've already established the all-powerful antagonist, keep him till the end of the run, or at least give him a satisfactory death. I'm not saying that you can't subvert our expectations, but the rushed and stupid way you did it with Snoke absolutely pissed me alongside half the Star Wars fanbase. It really is anarchy. You know, the relationship between Kathleen and Ryan is similar to that of the story of Dirty John. She accepted this man into her life, and without even realizing it, Dirty John over here is destroying over 4 decades of a decorated franchise right under her nose. That's not the worst part. She is still by his side defending him alongside his shitty product. It's quite astonishing how this woman has no respect for her own company. Rey and Kylo then proceeds to fight these Red Knights because I guess they had to insert at least one scene where lightsabers are used. It's a pretty decent action sequence, quite obvious that it was choreographed to the brim, as you may notice a few of them missing their cues. Choreographing wide shot action sequences takes a great deal of talent, work and effort, and I can really appreciate that they went for it. But it's not as polished as the ones from, say, Daredevil, John Wick, or even Deadpool 2. But at this point, I think I can be a little grateful and accept this instead of getting a shaky cam, quick cut editing bullshit that's pretty much the norm in Hollywood today. The fight ensues as Mary Sue easily takes down these highly trained and deadly pawns that once protected the Sith Lord. Daisy Ridley seems to be doing all her stunts and fights, and I can really appreciate that this actress worked hard to do real training to make this sequence possible. And let's not forget that she never even bragged about it, unlike some other plank who lied about doing her own stunts and discredited her own stunt double. How fucking shameful. So here's the deal, right? We all know that Daisy Ridley had training, she looks like she can fight, but the same cannot be said about her character. Maybe Ryan forgot to factor in that aspect, that very important aspect that's essential to shape this character, might I add. Kylo seems to be in a little pickle, so Rey easily bests her opponent and throws the lightsaber across the room. And then this happens. Kylo then claims it's time for the old things to die and calls out for Rey to join him. He tells her to let go of everything and then even confirms with us that Rey's parents are absolutely nobodies. Filthy junk traders that somehow produced a naturally gifted Jedi. Well, definitely makes sense to me. The rebel fleet continues getting destroyed one by one as Holdo looks like she's onto something as we see her charging up the ship to head into light speed. Just like Poe, I initially thought that this hag was going to run away like a coward just based on how she was written throughout the film. So over on the First Order ship, Phasma literally does the dumbest thing ever. She tells her troops that execution by blasters wouldn't hurt, so let's waste a whole 44 seconds to hold up our lightning rod thingies while Holdo is concurrently on her way to destroy the Imperial fleet and allow our heroes to miraculously escape. By the way, 44 seconds is the amount of the actual runtime that I calculated from the point of the electric sticks above Finn and Potato's head to the point of when Holdo directly annihilates the First Order ship. We cut to Holdo and see her aiming the ship towards the Order as she jumps into light speed, and bloody hell, we're gifted with one of the greatest shots in cinematic history. Absolutely stunning. The pin drop silence and exclusion of music just made it that much more better. Say what you want about Rian Johnson's directing, but you can't deny that he crafted the most beautiful film of 2017. I can definitely vouch for him when you're talking about The Last Jedi from a visual standpoint. Kylo and Rey battles for Luke's lightsaber as they both try and outforce one another, but no one seems to be budging and ultimately causes the lightsaber to shatter. I wonder if you would get a scene of Rey fixing it in The Rise of Skywalker, but more than likely it's just going to be magically fixed. As I spoiled it earlier on, our admirable heroes manages to escape the deadly blast that literally killed every single troop around them. They even managed to escape without a single scratch or scar, and might I even add that a couple of troopers were standing an inch away from Finn and Potato when they were about to be executed. Don't fret though, because plot, you will never have to worry about the main characters. Remember the originals? Our main characters weren't invincible. Luke lost his hand, Han got frozen, Leia essentially became a slave, Chewie was caged up, and Obi-Wan was destroyed by Darth Vader. There was always a sense of tension that just kept us on the edge of our seats, not knowing the fate of our heroes. In the Disney trilogy, however, you get none of that. Fuck tension, fuck suspense, fuck interesting storytelling. Let's just give our heroes overpowered abilities, convenient ways out, and plot armor. Oh, look at that. Phasma is fine as well. She somehow teleported away from Finn and Potato, and in the process, leaving no dents or scratches on her shiny armor. So after failing the first time because she's a moron, instead of blasting them with a clear opportunity in sight, the plot lingers for a bit just so BB-8 can come in and save them. Phasma and Finn faces off in a decent battle, well choreographed and just looks stunning from a visual perspective, especially with the destruction going on in the background. Phasma knocks Finn down into a hole and literally no one in the audience feared for Finn's life because plot. Sure enough, he rises on some lift and rips her helmet. Phasma falls into a pit of fire and dies. A pretty short and unsatisfying battle considering that Phasma and Finn had a decent little storyline going on that showed the potential of a great sub-feud next to Rey and Kylo. Was that, you say? Great potential? Well, maybe I should delve deeper into the storyline. Psych, bitch! You thought. Not exactly sure why they casted Brienne for 23 seconds of screen time when it could have literally been anyone in the suit. Finn, Potato, and BB-8 escapes with no wounds or any sort of damage inflicted on them. Hey, after all, this is a Disney movie, so we definitely need a happy ending, right? Hux no notices Kylo on the ground as we see him slowly reaching for his weapon to perhaps finish off Kylo, but immediately goes back on his decision as Kylo awakes. Kylo brilliantly lies to Hux that it was Mary Sue who murdered Snoke. He orders General Hux to get the troops ready and head down to the rebels' new base, and poor old Hux gets choked out when he tries to slap away Kylo's orders, and I genuinely feel sorry for him at this point. The rebels get behind the shield door as it closes just in time for our heroes to slip in. How bloody convenient. I'm honestly dead as tired at this point, constantly complaining about the convenience. Really does feel like a Disney Channel original movie where towards the end the nerdy guy gets the hot girl totally out of his league as they dance the night away at prom. But to be fair, Disney Channel back in the day was actually watchable, so quite unfair of me to compare Geek Charming to The Last Jedi. Just one of my many guilty pleasures. BB-8 finally reunites with Poe, the rebels start up the base and broadcast distress signals to their allies across the galaxy. Amazing how all the equipment still works perfectly fine, kinda like how the kids fixed up the bloody old Jeep in Jurassic World. Yeah, I mean, it was quite a dumb movie, but at least it was fun. Finn reminds us that the plot allowed the First Order to have some sort of battering ram cannon that can crack open the big ass shield door like an egg. He then demands that the battering ram be taken out as soon as possible as the rebels get into position. Based on the trailers, I initially thought the red marks covered up by the snow was blood, but turns out to be salt. The rebels get on some crappy old ships as we notice that they can't even fly properly. Poe commands the rebel fleet to take out the battering ram as we notice some AT-ATs and TIE fighters sent out by the First Order. The battle itself is well done, definitely an homage to the opening battle from The Empire Strikes Back, and amidst the battle, Potato seems to be in a bit of trouble but is conveniently saved by Mary Sue piloting the Falcon, as she manages to drive away of what's left of the Order's aerial fleet away from the rebels. The rebels edge closer and closer to the battering ram in hopes of taking it down, but one after another they get shot down instead. Don't worry, Finn is fine though, because plot. Poe commands the rest of the crew to pull back as Potato tries to get Finn to pull back himself, but Finn shows us shades of a true and brave hero as he keeps going. Notice how Rose pulls back and is clearly quite a distance from Finn. Well, make sure you remember that. The way things are playing out on screen, it looks like it's gonna be a valiant sacrifice that's gonna ensure Finn's legacy as a resistance hero, a worthy story to be engraved in the history books, a perfect way to wrap up Finn's character. Wait, what the fuck? You gotta be fucking kidding me. Another subversion of expectations. We clearly saw Potato a freaking mile away from Finn. There is no chance in hell she caught up with him. Especially with that snail-paced ship. I mean, that's just fantastic. She has teleporting powers now. Way to kill the moment, Potato. What I thought could have been the best scene of the movie, absolutely ruined because this Potato loves him, I guess. And she just established herself as a grade A idiot for two big reasons. Number one, you could have killed him. Number two, you saved him and gave the opportunity for the ram to break down the shield and kill the entire resistance. For what, Rose? For what? She even gives herself a little pat on the back telling Finn that she saved him and proceeds to utter the most idiotic and cringeworthy line I've heard in a very long time. We're gonna win by not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. Honey, listen here. Even if you do manage to save the people you love, the First Order is still gonna be there, you moron. You're eventually gonna have to fight the First Order and kill them before they annihilate you. And if that wasn't bad enough, the cringe level goes to a whole new height. So it seems the distress signals has reached their allies, but no one responded. How fucking sad. Leia claims the galaxy has lost hope, which is a direct reference to the Star Wars fanbase on the future of this franchise. Out of the shadows, a cloaked figure shows up and reveals himself to be Luke. They have a nice little final exchange of dialogue as Luke lets Leia know that he's here to face Kylo. Leia has come to terms that her son is completely gone, but Luke says otherwise. He hands over Han's dice to Leia and gives a cheeky little wink to 3PO. Honestly, this could have been an emotional punch to the gut if the real Luke showed up and died defending the resistance. It's sad that Luke never got to physically say goodbye to his sister or his droids. He then steps out into the open ready to face the entire First Order by himself. Kylo demands every gun, cannon and blaster to be fired on Luke, and after a barrage of attacks, Hux orders his troops to stop, but Luke is still standing tall without a scratch on him. Would have actually been a great prospect if Luke covered himself with a force bubble and established his his mastery of the Force, even after years of shutting it out. That's just my suggestion, but one shall not question the brilliance of Rian Johnson's writing. An impatient and frustrated Kylo gets down from his ship to face his old master. Luke and Kylo pulls out their lightsabers, prepared for a final duel that's perhaps going to determine the fate of the galaxy, and back at base, Poe insinuates that Luke is just a means of a distraction. Once again, not exactly sure why Luke didn't just tell them the plan. C-3PO lets us know that there isn't an exit path other than the entrance. Poe notices the crystal critters heading into a certain direction and leads the way to perhaps discover an exit route, as we see Chewie and Rey attempting the same thing. At the same point in time, the face-off between Luke and Kylo continues as Kylo assures that he will kill off the last Jedi, only for Luke to reply with,
"Every word of what you just said was wrong."
Rey notices a bunch of boulders blocking an exit path and without breaking a sweat, just lifts them. I mean, for God's sake, at least show her failing a couple of times or show us a physical picture of her struggling at least, and then proceed that with an impactful scene of Rey gathering her thoughts, calming herself and just feeling the Force. And when she finally does become one with the Force, only then give her the opportunity to be able to lift the boulders. But just look at her face here, absolutely zero sense of struggle. We jump back to the lightsaber battle that's not really a lightsaber battle. Kylo attempts to strike down Luke but just goes through him. Another subversion of expectation to the highest degree. Reveals it was just a Force projection as Luke still sits unharmed on the island. He uses up the last of his energy and dies. How fucking unsatisfying. The least they gave us is this iconic shot paying homage to A New Hope with John Williams' amazing score in the background. Just disappointed with Luke's character as a whole in The Last Jedi. I wouldn't say I'm angry because I'm pretty much over it. And on another note, I'm quite terrified of how they're gonna use Lando in episode 9, but let's be honest, most of us are expecting him to just die the same way Luke did, which is fucking unsatisfying as hell. Kylo and his troops enter to an empty base as we see the rebels escaping on the Falcon. Rey and Kylo connects one last time. Nothing is said between them as she shuts the door. Poe and Rey officially meet for the first time as we notice some of the Jedi books. So Rey did save them after all, and I'm guessing that she's gonna be reading up those texts between the time gap of episode 8 and 9. Leia and Rey felt Luke's fate and they at least knew he died with peace in his heart. How are we gonna rebuild the rebellion from this? Rey asks as Leia lets her know that they have everything they ever need. Need I remind you that you're probably 1/10 the size of the First Order, have no home, salvage barely any weapons, and have no allies to aid you, so not exactly sure what you meant by we have everything we need. We get to our final scene where we see these enslaved kids from Canto Bight talking about Luke Skywalker. As we see this kid using the Force to bring the broom towards him, he looks up into the stars and sees the Falcon as we get a final shot of the kid showing off his resistance ring. Wait, what? When did Rose even give him the ring? I probably missed it, or I guess it happened in the background. And what does this final scene actually mean? Is he going to be a future resistance member, or is this like a message that anyone can be a part of the Force fighting against the dark side? But at this point, I actually don't care because we're finally done. I'm gonna keep this short and simple. The Last Jedi is technically one of the most well-made films in the franchise, but has established itself as the worst storyline, not only from the perspective of picking up right after its predecessor, but as a standalone film as well. Rian Johnson may have the chops to direct a visually stunning film, but has no talent whatsoever when it comes to writing a movie. This man literally had no excuse. J.J. Abrams already did the hard part. He had the biggest task of reigniting this franchise and built a pretty solid foundation, and in terms of rewatchability, The Force Awakens is fine, but The Last Jedi will not be a movie you can sit down and enjoy years from now. This will be that film that you skip every time when you have a marathon because it's just that bad. Considering the fact that J.J. Abrams is more than likely gonna retcon episode 8, just confirms with us that The Last Jedi will be irrelevant after 2019. Quite sad as well that we have to accept this franchise is spiraling down a depressing road as Bob Iger is still confident of keeping Kathleen Kennedy on board and allowing her to make rash decisions like hiring Benioff and Weiss to direct a future Star Wars trilogy. Cause let's be honest, these guys have some sort of talent, but it was quite evident that they just didn't care about the final season. That's why they kinda rushed it. And I really do hope that they at least blow what's left of their creative load on the future of this franchise. But for now, we shall live in fear, knowing full well Kathleen Kennedy and her political agendas are here to stay. Hope you enjoyed my personal take on The Last Jedi. I know it's a blur bloody long video, but I needed to put out every ounce of my critical thoughts and opinions on one of the most talked about films in recent times. I'm going to be doing a similar in-depth review for Captain Marvel real soon, so look forward to that, because I know I won't, as it would require me to rewatch the movie itself, but it shall be a torturous experience that I'm willing to succumb through, as I have quite a lot to say about that film. Hope you guys can hit the subscribe button to show support for the channel, and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, so at least I get some form of feedback from you lovely people. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Ciao.